All right, 11th grade, let's talk about our Civil War portfolio, which is the major assignment that we're working on this week. It's the only thing that you are working on other than Membean. Okay, you still have Membean, but this is like most of what we're going to be doing. So, our Civil War portfolio, goodbye Romanticism, hello realism. So this video is just going to review the project sheet that was attached to your RenWeb lesson plans and homework. I know sometimes it's helpful to hear things explained out loud in addition to reading them, but I don't think it will give you any really new information that's not on the project sheet. So what we're going to be doing with this portfolio is assembling a collection of photographs, poems, songs, and letters or diary entries from the American Civil War so that we can identify the end of the Romantic era and our transition towards realism. So we're coming back now to our American timeline. We had the Romantic era that ends in 1860 with the beginning of the Civil War. So this portfolio is going to help us mark that transition and prepare us for realism next week and then modernism the week after. So in addition to collecting these artifacts that already exist, you're going to be writing a short reflective analysis of the literature based on what you put into your portfolio. So a lot of what you're doing is assembling, reading different things, and kind of choosing out the things that you like. And then there's going to be a writing component after you have selected and pulled all of those things together. So I'm differentiating between honors and CP, so pay attention to what section that you're in to make sure that you have everything that you need. So the content of your portfolio, you're going to have 3 photographs from the Civil War era, and each of them needs a caption. All right, it doesn't need to be super specific, but if it is from a particular year or a battle, just make sure that as you're looking for photos that you keep those captions there. They don't need to be original. So 3 if you're in honors, 2 if you're in college prep. And then we're going to deal with poems and songs as one category because the line between them really is very thin. So you're going to have either 4 or 5 different poems from the era that you collect. And then of those 5, 2 will be analyzed and annotated for their structure, so things like rhyme scheme and stanzas, their style, including literary devices, figurative language, connotation, diction, all of those things, and then their ultimate meaning or theme. And those 2 that you're analyzing are included in the 5. So you'll have 5 total, and then 2 of those you're going to be kind of marking on. And then you're going to have 2 letters or diary entries from 2 different voices of this time. One of them needs to come from a soldier or a combatant, like a general or a sergeant, I don't know, other military hierarchy positions. And then the other diary or letter entry or letter, there we go, needs to come from a minority voice of the era. So coming from an African American or from a woman, like a wife or a mother who has sons or children or husbands in the war, or from a Native American, because guess what? They still exist. They're still in America, and they're actually a really big part of the Civil War, even though we kind of tend to overlook their involvement. So also know that when I say minority voice, I'm using minority to describe how society viewed their voice, not what I actually think of their voice. So I want to kind of clarify that distinction. You might have an overlap if you do a letter from a soldier and a letter from an African American. There were a lot of people who were enslaved who also fought in the war. So if there is a little bit of overlap, that's okay, but you need to clarify which is which and still have two. Okay. Okay, so you are assembling all of those different pieces in your portfolio. And then at the very end, there's going to be something original that you write, that you contribute to the portfolio. So we're going to call that a reflective analysis because I want it to be part reflection and part analysis of what you discover and what you research in the Civil War era literature. So you need to reference your chosen pictures, poems, songs, or letters to describe what the era was like for people. What can you learn from the way that they were approaching life, from the way that they were approaching war and each other individually and as a whole? What can you see about the literary landscape at this time? How do you see things changing, maybe from where they were in the Romantic period? So this is just 1.5 pages. It's really not that long, double-spaced, MLA format. And you need to do a few things as you kind of reflect and analyze. So make sure that you refer to at least 3 highlighter. There we go. 3 of your portfolio items. So just refer to them by title or pull out quotations and refer to something specifically in those to show that we're making a really clear textual reference. And then some other things that you can consider in your writing. This is just for inspiration. You don't need to cover all of them, but I think it's a helpful list to start with as you're reflecting. Is the nature of war and the nature of violence at this time. You can be looking at differing perspectives because your portfolio is definitely going to have some different perspectives in it. With the personal nature of poetry and letters, you're going to see some psychological effects on combatants and on family members, on people who are at home, and then what the individual human spirit is like at this time, because as our other video said, it goes through a lot of changes in what people believe about humanity. So on this slide, I'm going to give you just kind of an example of how you could annotate 2 of your 5 poems. Our portfolios are going to be all collected into a single Microsoft Word document. So what you should do is take advantage of the highlighting, bolding, and other text features in the program to do your annotations on there. So I'm going to kind of show you what I mean here, and we'll go over. This is Untitled Poem by George Henry Borker from 1864. So we're near the end of the war. Things have been very bloody. There have been hundreds of thousands of casualties. So let's read it together. Blood, blood, the lines of every printed sheet through their dark arteries reek with running gore. Ugh. I'm going to just start right there. So I've got blood imagery, arteries, running gore, and then I'm going to start my legend over here. 'Tis the sole subject with which neighbors meet. Girls at the feast and children in the street prattle of horrors, flash their little store of simple jests against the cannon's roar, as if mere slaughter kept existence sweet. Horror, slaughter are all contributing to this really violent diction. Whew. Okay, it fits. Oh heaven, I quail at the familiar way this fool the world disports his jingling cap, murdering or dying with one grin a gap. So I've got a few different devices here, so I'm going to change up my marking. Oh heaven, I quail, that is an apostrophe. And then this fool the world disports his jingling cap is a personification. So I would kind of mark those. I have an apostrophe, I have personification. Our very love comes draggled from the fray, smiling at victory, scowling at mishap, with gory death companioned and at play. So it looks like at the end of my poem, I've got a little bit more personification. So I would maybe, whoop, there we go. Yours is obviously going to be much neater than mine is, because you'll be able to type up your your legend, and spend a little more time on it. This is just an example to kind of show you how you could get started. Some other things that I might note in my annotations are the rhyme scheme. I have sheet, gore, door, meat, street, store, roar, sweet. Ooh, this might be a sonnet because I have this A, B, B, A, B, B, A. Structure, and it is a sonnet. I think it's a Petrarchan sonnet because I have my octave of 8 lines and my sestet of 6 at the end. So that's really interesting. This is totally unexpected. I should have known this was a sonnet before I started, but it's very interesting because sonnets typically deal with the subject of love. That's what they're known for, is that sonnets are associated with love. And so we take the structure that's so normally associated with romance and sweetness and life and passion, and then we take that structure and we put it into something about violence and death and destruction. So that's really cool. What a great example. Ugh, it all works out. So this is just an example of kind of how you're going to be annotating the 2 of your 5 poems. You do not need to do all 5 poems, you just need to do 2. Okay, returning to the project sheet, looking at structure and formatting. So you are going to copy and paste all of your images, your photographs, your songs, your poems, and diaries entries into a single Microsoft Word document. Okay, so you're going to copy a lot of it over as text, like some of the different poems and things like that, but you might also copy and paste in images as well, obviously the photographs, but some of the diary entries might be like manuscripts, and you can copy and paste those images over. Make sure that the script is legible, and if it's not, maybe copy the picture and copy the text, so that we can kind of get a feel for what the original looked like and still be able to read it. So this is going to end up being a pretty long Microsoft, like a pretty long Word document, okay? It should all be in one place. And this is really important because you're going to order your contents chronologically, which means you're not going to have your 2 pictures and then your poems and then your letters. You're going to put them in order of the year in which they occurred. So if you have 2, for example, that happen in 1860, but you can't figure out which one came first, like that's okay. Just make sure that 1860 comes before 1861, comes before 1862. So do it in chronological order so that hopefully we can see some type of progression in the perspectives and in the content that is occurring during this wartime period. So provide the dates and authors for each source. That might be like the author, it might be a photographer if you can find the photographer. A lot of them, this is just like your basic document information, okay? So make sure you give us that. And then the last thing is to provide consistent formatting for the whole document. So all of your spacing, all of your font choices, etc. After you have copy and pasted everything in, select all of it and then put it all to the same font, all to the same spacing, so that we have some semblance of consistency throughout your document. Okay. This last slide is just some suggestions and some resources to hopefully help you out as you start to work. So there is a list of really great websites and resources that I put onto that project sheet. So go check out the PDF and check out the links that I gave you. They're going to give you a really good start for poems and songs and letters and some other things as well. So some other suggestions. If you can work in actual Microsoft Word rather than the online platform, I think you're going to have a better time. I know that the capabilities online are not quite the same as on the desktop, so if you can, try and work in actual Microsoft Word rather than the online platform. I also suggest that you print the project sheet and cross things off as you do them, like a checklist. So once you have like your letter from a soldier, cross that line out. Once you have your other letter, cross out the other line. Use it as a checklist so that by the end of the project, you should be able to look at that handout and everything on the page will be crossed off. That'll help you to make sure that you have everything that you need. Last few are to choose all of your portfolio content before you write the analysis. The analysis is really going to show you, it's really going to depend on what you have in your portfolio. So don't put the cart before the horse or whatever they say. Do your portfolio first and then write your reflection afterwards. And then lastly, as you're choosing your poems and your pictures and your letters, read a few different options before you settle on something. I know it's quicker to go with the first two that you find or the first three that you find, but you really might be missing out on something that could be really interesting to you or that could lend a really great perspective to your portfolio. So look around a little bit before you decide on something. And then alternatively, once you've looked around, just pick something, okay? Just pick something. So don't let yourself get stuck in either part of not looking at anything or looking at so many things that you can't choose. I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. I am here to help.